Hi, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to today's presentation. We titled our little Q&A session interview type presentation today, Vampire Lore and Divination. Today I have a guest presenter. Her name's Shanna Stoker. She's the owner of the Ghoulish Garb. I actually have found her on TikTok and she's been really helpful, and she's an actual descendant of the Bram Stoker, who's the author of the 1987 Gothic horror classic, Dracula. So we're gonna dive into this wonderful presentation. So Shanna, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me. I am so glad to join you all today. But yeah, you did a great job. That was perfect. My name is Shanna Stoker, and I am the co-owner and operator of the Ghoulish Garb. And yes, my TikTok is the Ghoulish Gal. You know, it's kind of a mix of me and the business, and also my cats. Because they're the real stars of the show, of anything, right? And I also practice witchcraft. So I talk about my beliefs and my practice there as well. But mostly it all kind of ties together with our tarot, the Ghoulish Garb. We create tarot cards. That is one of my main passions right now. And it's an amazing creative outlet. And I really think that, I wouldn't be able to be here with this business based on all things witchcraft and spooky if it weren't for the fact that at a very young age, I learned about being related to Bram Stoker. And that gave me a real sense of identity of I'm not strange for having these interests. It's part of my family, and and it's okay. And it's okay to explore. And I think because of that, at such a young age, that's why I'm here now, just accepting who I am and trying to help others accept their strangeness too. But today I would really like to, obviously I'm going to talk about my business, the Ghoulish Garb. I'd love to talk about tarot, which is the divination part of this presentation. And I'll show you some of our cards and the way that we've worked on creating the cards. And I really want this to also be a Q&A. So if you're in the comment section, please, if you have a question or a comment, let us know, because Josh said that he's going to be, or excuse me, they are going to be using or kind of watching the comment section. So we have somebody watching. If you have questions, let me know. That helps me a lot. All right. So I just kind of want to dive into how I found out that I was related to Bram Stoker. So we actually can trace our family all the way back to Ireland in a little town I cannot remember the name of right now, but it's very near where Bram grew up. And our oldest descendant that we found so far, her name was Anne Stoker, and she was born in 1597, I believe. So we know that our family, the Stoker clan in Ireland, some of them moved to Virginia, and Bram himself actually went to Virginia, spent some time with his family there, and wrote part of Dracula while he was there. He also corresponded back home with some friends and family, so we have plenty of documentation that he was visiting Virginia during that time. Then from the Virginia family, we had a very small clan move down to Washington County, Alabama, which is where my grandfather is from. It is a tiny little place. I think they still maybe have a few, like last time I was there, which was about 15 years ago, they had one stoplight still. So I'm from Mobile, Alabama, which is it's the second largest city in Alabama. It's right on the Gulf Coast. So that's where I grew up. And we definitely have a lot of spooky culture in Mobile as it is. So it was really cool for me growing up to see that all around me and to participate in cultural events that celebrated the macabre down there as well. And so, yeah, it's all been just a huge part of my personality. And because the family has known about being related to Bram for generations, we didn't really have to find out. We had documentation. We had a family Bible with names in it that we could, draw all the way back to Virginia and to when he was visiting. And so I've heard about him my whole life, but I didn't fully understand the significance, because when I was a kid, I just kind of understood there's a million different Dracula stories out there in the media, whether it's television or books or whatever. And so I had heard he'd written Dracula, but I kind of thought he was a writer who wrote a book based on vampires, right? I didn't realize, oh, he originated, like he is the start of all of that. And it was when I was in second grade, I had just read a book called Haunted Histories. I believe that was the name. And it was a book dedicated to kids, but talking all about kind of spooky history, which was right up my alley. And so I had just read an excerpt about the fact that supposedly Ring Around the Rosie was actually inspired by the Black Plague. And of course, that was just the coolest thing in the world to me. And so I started writing my very own horror story based on a little girl, much like myself. I was in second grade again. I think I just said that. And I don't remember anything about the story except for it was called Rose Red. And then I found out there was already a Rose Red about a little girl in a haunted house. So I had to go back to the drawing board. But I was working on this story whenever I was visiting my grandparents in Auburn, Alabama, which is where they moved to after Washington County, where my grandfather moved up or grew up. And I told them I was writing a horror story, and I told them what it was about, and they got so excited. I mean, again, I'm like 7, I think, and they were so excited. They said that I was kind of continuing on with the family lineage and name and everything. And I didn't really fully understand. And that's when they explained fully the significance of Bram Stoker. And we watched a few depictions of his work. My favorite being the Bela Lugosi version. Absolutely. Very classic. You can't get better than that, in my opinion. And yeah, from that point on, I remember being a little girl and I was always bubbly and always very, out there, and I loved making friends, but I was also very interested in spooky, witchy things constantly. All I wanted to do was be a witch or a vampire. I wanted to sleep in a coffin, but I also wanted flowers everywhere. So I still have that aesthetic. I very much call myself kind of a Persephone goth. That's my, which I feel like, that is pretty self-explanatory, right? But yeah, it helped me at such a young age to say, I'm who I'm supposed to be. When adults around you are saying, honey, are you okay? Because you're reading scary stories to tell in the dark right before bedtime, or because your favorite song is Kidnap the Sandy Claus from Nightmare Before Christmas, or, you're seeing ghosts. Because I did have a lot of paranormal experiences. I have my whole life. There's just all of those things culminated in me feeling like I was too different, but I could mask it. And then at 7 or 8 years old, already feeling that way, already feeling so much very, very like an outsider, unless I masked it, very much kind of alone in my interests and in my thoughts, because I thought a lot about the macabre in a way that I feel like a child usually doesn't. And my mother's always said that I was like that. I was an old soul from the time I was born. And I just remember thinking about the afterlife and death and life, and I don't know, it just fascinated me. And so to hear that he had created this amazing story in a time where delving into your own darkness wasn't exactly celebrated. And I felt like I was at a time in my life where it wasn't being celebrated. And to see what he did with that and how much it's influenced culture, and how much him just accepting his own interests and where his mind was going and creating art from it, gave the world such a brilliant gift and led me to being able to accept and better, I guess, create. He inspires me every single day, and I'm just so grateful. And so for me, it's not something I do talk about typically, like this on this platform with people watching whom I don't know, but I'm excited to, because it's something that I'm really proud of. And in a way, more than just Bram Stoker, the writer, but Bram Stoker, my family member, Bram Stoker, a lot of my inspiration. So if you have any questions, I would love to answer any that you might have about my lineage. And then if not, we can move forward and talk about where that's led me to today.
Yeah, so I actually have a few questions in the chat.
Great.
So let's go ahead and start with the first one. This is not tied into lineage initially, But the first question is, how does one start using tarot cards? And how do you better understand how to read the cards?
That's a great question. So I personally started reading tarot with just majors. I spent a good, I didn't do it consistently because I started tarot when I was 15. So I spent a few years really mainly just working on the majors because it wasn't consistent. Now you don't have to do that. I was at the point where I was not sure what I was doing, or even if I was supposed to be doing this. And it was just, I didn't have any guidance. But we have a wonderful, a wonderful platform here on the internet where you can go to YouTube or TikTok, or Biddy Tarot is a wonderful resource, BIDDY, biddytarot.com. They give very good, concise explanations of the cards without delving too deeply to where you feel like you can't understand. And they give you like concise paragraphs, but they also give you like blurbs at the top of each one. So if you're looking for the star, it'll tell you words to associate with the upright meaning versus the reversed meaning. But to get started, I just recommend buying a deck. That's the first thing. And a lot of people believe, especially in the witchcraft community, there's a lot of people that do believe that you can't buy your own tarot decks, that they must be gifted to you. I personally don't like that belief because it does feel a little bit like I know from personal experience, it's difficult, especially if you're coming from a place where you don't have a community of witches around you or of tarot readers around you, and you're genuinely interested. Well, okay, now you can't buy your own deck, but you don't want to ask your family for a deck because maybe they're not exactly excited about your interest in tarot, and you don't want to ask somebody to buy it for you. And then there's a loophole of, if I give them the money, but they buy it for me, is it still okay? And I just don't understand the red tape. I think it's also a little difficult because, not everybody, like I said, not everybody has that community, and you don't want to wait for somebody to gift you a tarot deck before you can get started. So I say, buy your own deck. It's okay. I'm going to give you the okay right here. I'm not the end all be all, but I'm saying it's okay. So I got started with it with just a regular Rider-Smith-Waite tarot deck. And I'm going to show you some art from one of my favorites, which is just a very simple deck, but I like it because it's on matte cardstock. But so I kind of like the antiqueness of it. But this is kind of an example. This is one of the major arcanas. This is the Hierophant. And so what I did with my Rider-Smith-Waite deck, which is kind of the original tarot deck. I mean, it came out in 1909, and it's what most tarot decks base their symbolism off of. I just went through and I separated the major arcana from the minor arcana. And I will be happy if people are confused about what I'm talking about with arcana. I'm not sure what the level of interest and knowledge here is. Please let me know, and I will be happy to delve more into that. But yeah, I started with just the majors only, which is exactly one of the reasons why when we were creating our own deck, we decided to do majors only at first, because we're new creators and we didn't know, first of all, are people going to like our stuff? And secondly, we wanted it to be something that readers who are new can pick up this deck, and read about it. And I've got this gorgeous guidebook that I've written with my partner that tells about every single piece of imagery and symbolism that we have created. So, for example, one second, I'm going to show you the Hierophants next to each other. All right. And they're all based off of the Rider-Smith-Waite. So this is the Rider-Smith-Waite versus our Hierophant, which is showing Cthulhu. And, we choose all of our imagery to be based off of this Rider-Smith-Waite because I love the way that it tells a story and speaks to you. And that's the main thing with tarot, is you have to be in touch with your intuition. You can do a reading and read from the guidebook and not know anything about your reading, because the guidebook is just one interpretation of the cards. It will help you better understand the symbolism. But when you understand the symbolism, and you start learning, okay, red means passion in this deck, and white means purity, Or if they have their hands pointed like this, that's 2 fingers towards heaven and 2 fingers towards earth. So that's about the higher self and the ego self mixing together. There's so much just little things of symbolism that when you start to learn your deck like that, then it becomes easier for your intuition to tell you what you're supposed to be seeing in this particular reading. So to get started, I very much highly recommend either getting a majors only deck like one of ours. This deck is perfect for beginners because it is based on Rider-Smith-Waite, but it's also fabulous for for readers who've been around the block like myself. I often use it as an oracle on top of my Rider-Smith-Waite full deck, just to kind of give me more clarification for my readings. But to get started, that's the best thing you can do is just buy your deck and start looking at it. Give yourself a reading. Cleanse yourself beforehand, whether that be just taking deep breaths, whether that be, using something like smoke, like lavender, smudge sticks, or, anything like that. Basically just anything that makes you feel like you're cleansing. I also love to use like singing bowls, or I have these gorgeous, where did they go? Well, I have these witches' bells somewhere. I can't remember where I put them. But sound cleansing is something that I really enjoy doing because I'm a musical person. I sing and I love music. And so sound cleansing for me, the vibrations, even more than using smoke cleansing or just taking breaths or just whatever, that sound really helps me to kind of get into my space and into my mentality. And so I always try to do that and ground myself before I do a reading. Grounding just meaning, putting my feet on the ground or sitting on the ground and like feeling the energy kind of settle a little bit instead of all this frazzled energy, because I deal with mental health issues. I have anxiety and depression and ADHD. And so I've a lot of times got these kind of frazzled background noise, this kind of background noise is always there. And so to take a moment, just a moment, to settle all of that and say, okay, we're entering into this space of intuition. I'm going to just listen. I'm going to feel. And if the spirit or whatever deity that you work with, or if you don't work with the deity at all, just yourself, your higher self, whatever you want to tell me, whatever I need to hear, please guide me in my intuition to understand that. And then I'll do my reading. And from there, I usually try to wait until I've pulled all my cards. Like every day, I usually do like a 3-card reading. I'll wait to pull all of my cards to see what the overarching theme is. So yesterday, for example, I pulled the Hierophant, I pulled the Hermit, which is all about, in fact, I have it right here, what I pulled yesterday, because I've got to write it down in my journal. That's another great way to learn and I still do this because it helps me learn and it helps me retain, and I have short-term memory loss. So even though I've written books on tarot, I still am like, what does that mean? So like, don't, it's okay if I'm not like some of these people who are just like, oh, this card is this and this. Sometimes I have to still look at my books that I've written. So that's okay. Don't let imposter syndrome keep you from something that really can be a beautiful way to understand what's going on in your own mind and your own life and your subconscious. But anyway, so my pool yesterday, I asked, what message do I need to hear today? I'm feeling really good. I had a terrible September where my depression just really kicked me hard. And I was having thoughts that you shouldn't have about yourself or anyone. So, I worked really hard and talked to my doctor and fixed, some of my medications and got back into therapy, and I'm doing a lot better right now. So I wanted to know, spirits around me or my higher self, what are you feeling? What's your message for me? And so the first card I got was the Hermit. And the Hermit is all about taking a moment for self-reflection away. So in this card, he's actually at the top of a mountain and he's alone. There's solace up there. And I really love this card because it's all about, like I said, self-reflection and getting in tune with your higher self. He's an old man at the top of the mountain. He has worked hard to get there. He's been through a lot. And now it's time to take a step back and just let that peace lie, right? And I love this card also because there's so much symbolism delving into like what I was talking about before when you learn about, like, for instance, in tarot, in this deck, the right hand is going to be your consciousness. The left hand is going to be your subconsciousness. So in his right hand, he is holding a lantern. That's his conscious thought. And that lantern is actually going to be your forethought and your wisdom. He's using the lantern to see ahead of himself, that forethought, right? So that's your conscious mind. That's what that represents. The left hand, he's holding a staff. That is his conscious or his subconscious. And it is going to represent his inner strength, right? Because he's used that staff to keep himself steady as he's walked up that mountain. And so it's really about reflection and looking at what you've done, looking at how strong you've had to be, and taking a moment for pause and maybe looking ahead now too, right? So there was that card by itself. Then the next card that I got was the Three of Cups, which is a minor arcana card, but I had it upside down. So if you look at the Three of Cups, it's three women and they're partying, they're having a great time. And so this card, if it were upright, it might mean, hey, it's time to get convivial. Why don't you call your friends and try to get out a little bit? Why don't you get out of your shell? But I had it upside down along with the Hermit. And so for me, what this is saying, if I have these together, is again, a reminder to pause, to take this time for my own peace, and don't overdo it, because I'm doing better now. I have the tendency to overdo it and okay, I'm going to be doing all the things because I lost September for depression and now I got to catch up and I got to do social stuff and I've got to be on social media and make TikToks and do all these interviews and stuff. And it's okay, but remember, don't overdo it. And then I got Temperance, which is another major arcana card. And Temperance shows this gorgeous angel that is neither male nor female, non-binary. And the angel has 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on the land. The water and the land in this deck also represent consciousness and subconsciousness. So your subconscious thought is the water, the land is consciousness, and usually the sky or some sort of celestial object is your superconscious thought, your higher self. And so they have 1 foot on land and 1 foot in the water, which says that they are balanced between their consciousness and subconsciousness. And that can also be seen by the 2 cups that they are showing here. The water is flowing between the cups, that consciousness, that flow of energy, that flow and that balance within yourself. Temperance is all about patience, right? It's in the name. And it's about, again, sitting in the balance and allowing that to run through you and allowing that to energize you. And it's just such a gorgeous card. So now you can see all 3 of these together give me this overarching kind of idea of this message I was receiving, which is, you've done the work, you've been through it. Now let's just take a moment to pause and reflect and think about your inner peace and your higher self. Don't overdo it like you have a tendency to do, just a gentle reminder, and have patience because good things are coming. So that's an example of myself doing a reading for myself that I like to do. Again, it's all about taking the time to learn what the symbolism is, because yes, every card has a different story and different symbolism, but they all, you'll notice themes, right? So are there more questions so far about the tarot? Because I'd love to delve more into all of that.
Yeah, we have a variety of questions that are coming in. So me personally, I have a question. I know that you mentioned in our previous discussion that wasn't broadcast. It was an email between both of us that you mentioned that you're a historian. Would you or do you have any interest of compiling the whole family lineage and try to open up a museum or an archive? Is that something that you would like to do in the foreseeable future?
I've never thought about that, honestly, because the family that is directly, so I would actually be, I would be descendant from his uncle. I'm almost 100% sure, from Bram Stoker's uncle, because Bram Stoker actually only had a girl, a female child. And so when she got married, she took her husband's name. So there are no direct descendants with the last name Stoker, unless they've legally changed it from my understanding. I could be wrong. But I know that his direct descendants, and they live in Ireland, and I cannot remember, but their last name starts with a B, I believe. And my cousin Susan went over there and actually did research on the genealogical records with them. But I know they actually have a website already where they've done a lot of that research and archival study and collection. And so I know that's already kind of being done. But yeah, I would absolutely love to be a part of that research. I do have a degree in history, and I focused on archival studies and museum sciences. So it was, yeah, I don't know. It would be such a pleasure to be able to help with that research, or with that, with compiling all of that, the documents. And, I have tried finding a lot, like the family Bible that I remember looking at whenever they told me about it when I was in elementary school. And, I would love to get all of that together. But unfortunately, because my family's been here for so long and it's always just been kind of something that we knew about, you would think they would have taken, I guess, more care to keep things together. But it was more like, yeah, this is your family's Bible, or this is something that, you're not going to really, a lot of times it doesn't necessarily get taken the best care of, or you don't remember where you put it, or people get older and they forget and that kind of thing. So a lot of that stuff we haven't been able to find in a long time. But yeah, to be a part of that side of things and to really help honor his legacy in that way as well would be such a pleasure.
That sounds great. Another one of our other questions that came in from the comments is, I know you did mention that you wrote the tarot book that you featured earlier in the discussion. Have you written any other books? And do you have any plans to write any novels in the future?
I have not. I do think I will write a book. I've thought that for a while. And I also had an incredibly insightful psychic reading tell me very recently that I would write a book. I have a feeling though that the book I'm going to write will not be fiction. I think it's going to be something about my life, because I think that my story and what I have been through, the reason I talk about it all now, I do believe that it can help people in some way. I'm just not sure yet how. So I think of writing an actual book other than the tarot books will be in my future one day. And the way that I kind of go about these types of decisions is like, I have a feeling. And I always kind of know, okay, you'll know when the time is right. And a good example of that, going off on a totally different way, but a good example of that, well, let's just keep in the same vein. A good example of that is talking about being related to Bram. Whenever we started the business in 2018, a lot of people who did know about my lineage said, oh my gosh, you're starting a spooky business. You have got to capitalize on the Stoker name. You've got to tell people it's going to be a great way for you to launch your business. You can get publicity. You can, people are going to be interested. And I was just like, I get that. I totally do. But it didn't feel right. And I couldn't put my finger exactly on why it didn't feel right. But I just listened to my intuition. And it said, no, now's not the time. Not you never will, but now is not the time. And it literally took me until very recently, until right before I decided I'm ready to talk about it, to realize why it wasn't the time. And for me, my realization was that I needed to make sure my business could stand on its own 2 feet, that our products and our customer service, the quality of what we're actually giving to our customers, and the brand that we're creating could hold on its own without the help of name recognition or, anything like that. Like anytime I would correspond with anyone for the business purposes, I would always put just Shanna S. For the explicit purpose that I didn't want my name to be the reason somebody supported us. I wanted it to strictly be the quality of the business, of everything that we were putting into it. And my partner and I, when it comes to this is our baby. Like it is, we're perfectionists in this way and in ways with this. And, so I finally decided after it had been our third anniversary recently, our third anniversary of the business. A year ago, my partner and I were both able to be full-time with insurance. So, I feel like, okay, it's been a year since that point. We've only grown. I think it's time. And I had this just feeling. I didn't have to think about it. I just had this feeling one day of, it's time to talk about this. And that was in August. I think it was August 5th or something that I made the video on TikTok where you found me saying, hey, my name is Shanna Stoker. That sounds familiar. It's Bram Stoker, and I really, it's been such a pleasure because there has been a lot of excitement and a lot of opportunities to talk with people like I'm doing today about my lineage. And I'm grateful for that, but I'm so grateful too that I waited, because now when I talk about my business, it's, oh, and by the way, I'm trying to start something, so you should probably support me. It's, oh, and I have this established business with my partner, and we have these gorgeous pieces of art that you can see, and we have amazing reviews from 3 years of just working our behinds off, and it's just such a pleasure. And like I said, it's all about listening to your intuition. And really that goes back to tarot, because in the same way that you need to listen to your intuition to get good readings in tarot helps you hone your intuition, if that makes sense, right? It's a mental muscle for me. That's what intuition is. It's something we all have. We just have to learn how to hear it and how to listen and how to take stock in it, And yeah, that's a great, that was an example of that. I think I answered your question. I can't fully recall what the question was because ADHD and short-term memory loss, but please let me know if I need to elaborate on anything else.
Yeah, I think you answered the question perfectly. So this next one is a question/comments. So I'll do the question first and then followed by the comment. Did it take some convincing from your family that you were descendant from Bram Stoker? And then the comment portion of that is, I love reading his work, and if I heard something like that, it would put me for a loop. So
that's a great question. I think because like I said, my family has known for generations. So we kind of just talked about him like he was just another cousin, it's just like my cousin Bram. And we just kind of, it was always kind of something I'd heard about. I didn't understand the significance of it at first, but I did still at a very young age learn. I was about 7 or 8 whenever I did learn. So yeah, it threw me for a loop at first, but it was more of like, oh my gosh, that is so cool. And then immediately, I'm not so strange. But yeah, it was definitely, I think it's more now when anybody else like reads my name or they're like, oh, like Bram Stoker. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. That was, I'm a descendant. And they're like, no, that's not real. So I think it's more other people that have trouble actually believing it, which is totally fine. But yeah, my family, like I said, it's always been just this part of the stories that we talk about. Or I don't know, he comes up a lot. Like because I'm not the only spooky person in that family, like in my immediate Stoker family. So it just kind of makes sense that we talk about him. And my uncle actually looks a lot like him too. When he met some of the Virginia Stokers at a con, they were like, oh, you're definitely a Stoker, because he looks like Bram in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's just kind of always been something we talked about. So it's mainly other people. I hope that answers your question. Did you have another question in the comments or anything?
Yeah, I have another one. And then after this question, we did enable screen share. So if you want to show your business page, your business website, you can go ahead and do that. But this question is, what are you currently working on as a historian?
Honestly, I have a degree in history, but I am not doing I say I'm not doing anything with it. my history degree, while I'm not working directly with like in history and in that field, because of the amount of research and writing that I did in that degree program and reading, that has helped me tremendously with this creation process of our decks. So for example, right now we're working on a new deck that is going to be focused on very powerful female figures from different pantheons around the world. And so, for example, we've got the goddess Hecate, and we've got Isis, and we've got Yamaya from the Yoruba culture, and we've got, Athena and Circe and Diana. So we've got lots of different amazing goddesses. Not all of them are goddesses, so that's why I put that, because we also have like Baba Yaga and Morgan Le Fay. And because of the fact that like our first deck, the Terror Tarot deck, that was the first one we ever did. It's all based on Halloween stuff, right? So it's yes, we have people, or we have beings in here such as, the Headless Horseman. So I got to do lots of research on that to kind of decide how is this story going to fit into the card and how can we illustrate it. And like, yes, I did do that with this deck, but it's so different with our goddess deck because these are beings, these are deities and figures that I personally know people who work with them, who these are their patron goddesses, or this is who they pray to, or this is who they have an altar to, or whatever. And so like it's so much more important to me that I really am delicate and precise with how I approach these cards with my partner. And so, for example, like last night, we were actually just working on Morgan Le Fay, which is our next card that we're focused on. And we spent, over the past 2 days, we've been designing, and we've spent probably a total of 15 to 20 hours in 2 days of just reading and writing and coming up with ideas of what we're going to do for this card, because we know, for example, like what the card is that it's going to be. Okay. So we did the goddess Hecate as the moon. So I'm going to screen share and see if I can show you as we're talking about it, what it looks like. So I can show you the symbolism and explain how my research has led to that. All right. So let me go to Etsy. And you can go to etsy.com/shop/the Ghoulish Garb, all one word, or you can just go to Etsy and in the search bar, all one word, type the Ghoulish Garb, and we will show up for you. All right. So I actually, instead of Hecate, let's do Persephone, because that one is one of our newer versions. And I love this card. All right. So we decided to put Persephone in the Fool. How do I share my screen? Is it video settings? I have no idea.
In the Zoom, go down to the bottom, and it should be right next to chat.
It's green literally highlighted green, and I wasn't even seeing it. Okay. It's fine. It's fine. Okay. We're fine. We're gonna get there, guys. Patience. I appreciate it. Okay, here we go. Open system preferences. Obviously, I was not prepared to share my screen. All right, well, in the meantime, nope, I can't think about two things at once. Here we go.
So Shayna's going to be back here in a minute, everyone. She accidentally left the Zoom meeting. So in the meantime, while she rejoined us, in our marketing campaign for this event, we were also going to discuss ancestry. So for those of you that don't know, and here she comes back, We do have everyone in our community has access to Ancestry for free in library. So if you would like to come to the library, use one of our computers, we can go step by step on how you can use Ancestry within the library, do some genealogical research. It is free for everyone to use in our community. And we can go more in depth in that here in a bit, but glad you're back with us, Shanna.
Yeah, it had to reboot. I apologize for that. Okay, so let's try this again. Here we go. Okay, we're here. So let's go here to our goddess Persephone. And I'm going to, I've got a lot of stuff on this desktop. All right, so here we go into this picture. Basically, here we have the Fool. And if you're not familiar with the Fool card, it's going to depict kind of it's a male figure, and he's on the edge of a cliff, and he's got a knapsack over his shoulder, and he's holding a white rose, which symbolizes purity and everything. And he's got a dog trying to warn him, hey, there's a cliff there. But he's not listening because he's just in his own little world. And there's mountains in the back that represent basically the obstacles ahead of him that, again, he's just a little too far removed from to be seeing that. He's not taking that into account. And it's all about how your actions have consequences, and that you need to kind of, it could be rather, you need to maybe pay attention where you're going, and maybe pay attention to like what your choices are doing in not only your life, but the life of those around you. But it's also a really great reminder about being youthful, being childish in your nature, and not getting bogged down by fear. So it really, again, depends on the context of your reading, what you're going to see in it. So for example, here talking about my historical research and my ability to just like do a lot of reading and writing and coming up with a story. This is Persephone as the Fool. And so what we decided to do here was depict her in a springtime setting at the top of this cliff. And she is holding a little bit of ivy. I think that's, wait, no, it's not ivy. See, again, I've forgotten already. This was like a year ago that we drew this. But, you know, basically she's running after this. It almost looks like the butterfly is an illusion. That's meant to be that, okay? Because she's about to follow the butterfly off the edge of the cliff into the chasm, which is where Hades is waiting for her. You can see his hand kind of coming out of the fog down there at the bottom. And I really like the juxtaposition of this kind of warmth and springtime and happiness. And then as you move down the card, it gets colder and darker, and there's skulls, and there's this really menacing hand. And in the background, we have Mount Olympus, which is just supposed to be, again, those mountains in the background talking about there is more contextually to the world and to your or to what's going on in your life than just right here in this moment. And anyway, so that's, I absolutely love this card so much because of that. And everything has a meaning. So instead of the white dog here, we gave her a parrot because that's one of the animals that is associated with her. So her companion is a beautiful parrot, and it's trying to warn her like, hey, there's a cliff and like a dude's down there trying to get you. She probably shouldn't go down there. But you know, that's just one example of it. And so let me show you another. So I'm going to go back to our page, and I want to look up, let's just say I'm going to go to Goddess Tarot or Goddess Tapestry, just so that we can see kind of like all that we have available. Oh, here we go, Yamaya. I love her. All right, so she is from the Yoruba culture, and let's look at her. All right, so she is a river goddess, and we decided to depict her as temperance, which is what I was talking about earlier, because it's all about balance, and I usually depict it as a balance between kind of the water being your subconscious and the earth being your consciousness. And so for her, we decided to depict her as a mermaid, which she often is she is depicted that way. And the mermaid is in and of itself an example of that balance between the water and the land, and that conscious and subconscious thought. And it's about balance, and it's about self understanding. And so she's got this gorgeous halo around her beautiful hair, and it's just to show this understanding of higher self. Right. And then the waves, however, it show that you might have struggles, but you have to stay firm. You have to just kind of sit for a moment, even though all of this chaos might be happening around you. That's something that's not in the original Rider-Waite, but I felt really led to that imagery for her and for this depiction of the card. And again, that's where my intuition plays a part, is like, okay, she's telling me, or the card is telling me, or the spirit is telling me, or whatever is telling me that I need to add this in. And I don't know if maybe it's just because one person out there will need this card and need that reading one day, but that's how we do a lot of that. And so for her, we did a lot of reading and a lot of writing about to try to discover like what part does she play in the Yoruba, and the people who work with her, I want to make sure that we're always taking care of the people, who really love and worship these goddesses. All right. So here is, let's do one more. The goddess Kali. I love Kali. One of my friends actually works with Kali, so I talked with them a lot about this. So this one I have written, I think 2.5 pages of like just straight about her and how this particular story that we're depicting represents what the message is in the card, the devil. Now, this is something that I really want to talk about because people have this idea, especially people who don't understand tarot, that the devil is somehow a negative card, and it's not. It's all about the fact that sometimes we can lose track of our anger or our lust or our gluttony, right? The sins, the type of things that don't exactly add value to ourselves in our life and can detract if they get out of hand. That's what the devil is about. And so the reason we decided to depict Kali in this, reading her story, it just felt so perfect for the devil, because in this particular story, you notice that she's got one foot on this pedestal, and that's Shiva. That is Shiva's symbol down there. And Shiva, he was, I think I've got this right, married to Kali. Well, Kali had to basically defeat this demon, and that's whose head she's got in one of her hands. And in order to defeat this demon and his army of demons, because every single time that his blood would spill from a cut, it would sprout up more demons. And so that's why underneath his severed head, she's got a bowl collecting his blood so that it doesn't spill. But in order to defeat him and his army of demons, she had to really unleash this side of herself that was monstrous. Right? I mean, to the point where she was dancing on these bodies and causing the earth to quake, and dancing on the earth to the point where it was almost destroyed. So Shiva actually put his body underneath her feet to just either take the power from her dancing and save the world, or to just at least hopefully remind her that hey, what you're doing, you need to calm down. It has consequences. You're about to kill me, right? And so he was the reason that she was able to pull back and remember who she was, and remember, hey, this part of me that I had to let take over for a minute isn't exactly who I am. That's why we decided to give her the devil. And if you look, so there's 2 people down at the bottom of the devil, and they represent ourselves, right? So the woman has a tail of grapes, which is to basically represent excess of not just gluttony, but of just like worldly things. So it could be maybe you have too much, maybe you're spending too much, maybe you do have a problem with food or drink. imbibing too much, that kind of thing. Or we also have the man who's got the tail made of flame, which is passion and lust. And so if you notice, Kali is holding looks like a noose, but it's a rope around either of their necks. So it seems as though Kali has them under her control, Kali being, in this example, a representation of this loss of power and loss of self. And she's got them by the necks, but the ropes around their necks are loose to show that they might not realize it, but they have the power to very easily take that rope off of their neck. You have the power. If you're looking at this card, it's a reminder that you have the power ultimately to do something about these vices that you might be dealing with, to do something about your anger or your, whatever it is. And it may not be something that you can just say, hey, I'm going to flip it on and off, but do something as in get help, contact someone, go to therapy, go to rehab, whatever it is you need. It might not be that deep. It couldn't, but that's one example of the card and how we decided that her story with Shiva fit into the devil card. So when you see the devil or when you see the death card in your reading, please don't immediately think like the actual devil or actual death. This is another great example. Death is simply all about transformation and the end of a cycle. It's not your literal death. It's just the end of a cycle. So yeah, my history degree absolutely gave me a better understanding of like the level of research I wanted to do for each of these cards and the level of detail that I really wanted each of these cards to have. Did you have any other questions there that we could maybe delve into while we're looking at some of the stuff on our site?
I'm not sure if this pertains to your site, but I did have another question come in. Is being adept at mysticism natural or something that is nurtured?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think in the same way that singing, I believe anyone can sing. If you have vocal cords that work properly and an ear that can hear a tune, you can sing and you can learn to sing. And in that same way, I think we all have the ability to listen to our intuition, to be mystics in that way. Some of us just have a more naturally inclined talent towards it. It might come a little easier to us. It might call out to us before we even know what it is, just like singing was singing before I even knew what singing was, right? Dancing's another great example. I think anyone can absolutely hone that part of themselves because it's just, like I said, it is a mind muscle. And once you learn how to flex that muscle, and once you learn how to isolate that muscle, it becomes a lot easier. And doing exercises such as tarot is a great way to do that. And even exercises just as like a lot of times I'll get little intuitive things like don't take a left here when I'm driving. Like it might be a left I take every day and it's saying don't take a left here and I'll listen. I've finally just started because of years of not listening and being like, girl, you should have listened. Immediately, I've learned. So if I can, I take that right or I go straight, It's just intuition, manifestation, witchcraft, all of that. People tend to think, I was the same way, which is where I'm coming from. We tend to think it has to be very ritualistic. It has to be only with the certain tools around that you will be using. You have to have your altar and you have to wear your, cloak that you want to wear that puts you in the mindset or whatever it is. And I have learned from my personal brand of witchcraft and practice and intuition that it's so much more for me about the everyday, about the stirring my coffee in the morning with intention, putting each spoonful of sugar might be, I wish well to my friends today and I wish myself well today. I mean, little things like that. And then stirring with intention and then drinking it and saying like, let this fuel me today. Let this intention fuel me. Little things like that. And like I said, being in my car and hearing my intuition and saying, okay, I'm going to listen. Those little exercises, those little things can be so incredibly helpful while you're not sure where to start and you don't necessarily feel comfortable getting into the ritualistic sides of things, you know? And so, yeah, I think but for me, it is very innate. My grandmother was born with a veil over her eyes, which is what that means is it's like a very thin piece of skin. I think and it like covers your eyes from your forehead to your nose. And it's very easy to take off. A lot, it happens. But supposedly, when you're born with a veil over your eyes, that means that you have the gift of sight, of clairvoyance. And my grandmother is a very conservative Christian. So she personally, in her belief system, did not feel like she could pursue that, even though she had gone to a psychic a few times who told her, I think 2 different psychics had told her, you have the gift. In fact, one person came up to her in a store one time and said, I'm sorry, I know this is crazy, but you have the gift. And I think that was the spirit or the universe or her higher self or whatever you want to call it saying, hey, maybe you should look into this. But she didn't feel like that was her journey, and that's okay. It wasn't right for her. But she told me that, and she shared that with me because she knew I was having similar things going on. And she allowed me, by telling me that, she said, just because it wasn't my journey doesn't mean it's not yours. And she encouraged me in my divination, in my kind of delving into that side of things. And yeah, it was just really, really cool to know that it seems like it really comes in the family. And I do think that something like musical talent can come in the family, right? Just kind of in a natural affinity and a natural inclination towards it and ability towards it. And I think that comes into the paranormal experiences that I've had all my life. And my uncle, her son, also has those gifts. So while they do come naturally to some, we all have the ability, I truly believe. And it just takes research on what it is like to use and to understand that gift. And it takes research into your own self and your own psyche. A lot of introspection is needed. A lot of saying, hey, I'm noticing this particular part of myself, or maybe this action that I've done, or this attitude that I have is bogging me down and it's not helping me and my higher self to align. So I need to fix that. And you know what I mean? And like doing a lot of self-work, going to therapy, just trying to work on yourself, writing in a diary to get an idea of your thoughts and your feelings, anything like that. It can be so incredibly helpful and help you get into a better mindset. And even like I was talking about earlier, the grounding that I do before a reading, you can do that anytime. You can ground yourself. You can meditate while you're driving the car. It doesn't have to be just sitting down and being perfectly silent and, with your legs crossed. Like find what works for you. That is the beauty of mysticism and witchcraft, is there is no one right way. Just make sure that your intentions are good and make sure that you're doing your research and that you're open to ideas that might not necessarily always align, even if you don't go with those ideas, that you're open to listening and learning, because every single person, every single path, I really believe every belief system has something that they can teach you. And as long as you open your mind enough to say, hey, I'm willing to learn and hear, then that's a great place to start. Do we have any more questions that I can talk about? Be happy to continue.
If you would like to undo your screen share, I think we have time for one last question. I don't want to take too much of your time today. So I guess this will be our last question. And then I invite you to still join us after the live stream. I'll debrief you on some of the things that are going to happen behind the scenes. And then we'll go ahead and call it a day, okay?
Great, thank you.
All right. So our last question for today: if you had only one resource to learn about archetypes, what would it be? And I'm not sure if this ties into the mysticism question that was posted a little earlier.
Archetypes, I guess my question would be, what do they mean specifically about archetypes, if they can answer that? I'm not sure. Are they typing or because that would be my question. I just would like a little clarification on that.
I am unsure. I'm going to guess and think about the different categories or different ways people can practice witchcraft. I think that's what they're trying to get along, is like there's so much out there. Like
there is.
How would you,
absolutely.
Yeah, how would you like narrow down your search?
I started at bookstores. I've always loved bookstores. I've always loved libraries, right? I love books. I mean, we all do, right? We're here on a library page. So for me, it started by, I would go to Barnes & Noble or Books A Million, and I would just kind of like, oh, there's the occult section. Maybe I'll go over there. Maybe I'll find something. Maybe I'll look at a book title and be like, that I need to read. You know, maybe my intuition will lead me to something. And it did. And I found some really amazing books through that way, that I would, I didn't even buy them all. Sometimes I just would sit and read for a little while because I was afraid of buying them, because I was nervous about coming out of the broom closet, as it were, because it's from a conservative family. And, I couldn't take those books home. I didn't feel. And so I would just sometimes do that. And I know that a lot of libraries might not have that type of resource available, but bookstores and YouTube, surprisingly, has some incredible creators and videos out there that just talk about what does it mean for them to be a witch. And you have to take it all with a grain of salt, even what I'm saying. And I say that because it's important that you understand witchcraft in and of itself is meant to be a reminder that you don't have to fit into a mold. You don't have to fit into a box. It is about saying, looking at the societal standards and looking at the religious standards that might be around you, and saying, I'm going to focus on me, and not in a selfish way. I'm going to focus on me so I can be a better person for the world. I'm going to focus on me so I can find some peace because I want a better life. That's what my witchcraft is. And that's not everybody's brand of witchcraft. So remember, when you're listening to somebody talk about their witchcraft, about their mysticism, about how they use tarot, that we're all different. And we have taken the time to find what our path is and to find where our talents lie and what our intuition is telling us. And each of us in witchcraft has that journey. And so if you're interested in witchcraft or in tarot, you don't have to be a witch to do tarot. If you're interested in any of those things, give yourself grace and patience, and just listen to anyone that you can. Listen to what they have to say and find bits that you like. Like, I'm not going to like everything that every other witch says, but what I've done is during my research say, okay, well, I really like this concept and I'm going to take that. Or I really like this ritual that they do and I'm going to take that. And like, as long as it's not a cultural appropriation, as long as it's not a closed practice, make sure you're doing your research on that as well, because it's not good juju. But you know what I mean? Like, just try to be respectful and try to find your own brand of what that means for you, of what spiritualism means for you. Don't be too hard on yourself. Give yourself that grace.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate everything that you've done for us today, talking about your family history, your practice, your store. And I did mention earlier, there's some comments coming in. So in regards to that resource question that I asked, they did expand on the fact that it's symbols that have meanings throughout time. So I guess it ties into your tarot.
Oh, like into tarot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Honestly, reading, if you're looking specifically about tarot, I would say reading books on tarot, not just the books that come with tarot decks, but there are some extremely great, like actual books just about understanding how tarot ties into your intuition, and learning those archetypes. But I think, like, for example, that's why starting with the major arcana was really helpful for me, because most of what you're going to learn through the major arcana will help you tremendously as you move forward into the minor arcana, because there's 22 major arcana cards and there's 56 minor arcana cards. So you can understand why I kind of delved into major arcana first. And a lot of that symbolism that you're going to learn just through trying to memorize or understand what's going on in the major arcana will very well inform you as you move into the minor arcana. So I recommend looking for books on tarot reading. And again, not guidebooks for a particular deck, but just books on the art of tarot. You can go on Amazon to find some that have really good reviews. It's very simple to just like cite. I would just type in tarot reading books, and hopefully you'll get actual books about it, not just guidebooks. But I think that's the best way to do it. And just, again, if you have a question about an archetype, for example, if you notice that there's a priestess in the card, the high priestess, and you want to do a little bit of research on the historical context of priestesses, what does that mean? And what does that mean outside of just the context of the card, so that you can, okay, well, when I think of priestesses, I think of powerful women who hold knowledge. So maybe whenever I get this card, it could be maybe saying that that's what I'm working on. It could be a figure in my life. It could be just a reminder to not open yourself up too much when you're working on your spiritual practice, because she has like a veil behind her that is supposed to kind of be like she's shielding her unconsciousness or subconscious. So there's so much meaning like that. And when you think about priestesses historically, typically priestesses were kept away because they were women, right? So they had to be shielded, or they were shielded in the way that they clothed themselves. Even nuns or, religious figures now that we think about as like female religious figures, so that's another way that you might be able to understand, okay, when I think of priestesses, I think of them like hiding away or being covered. And so that's about like, yes, I'm going to be doing all the spiritual work, but I'm not necessarily going to be like the Hierophant is about disseminating that information. The high priestess is more about, let's keep it a little bit more inward and focused internally. So yeah, that's where learning historically and taking into consideration maybe how these figures outside of tarot might be represented and understood can even also help you with your tarot. So it's all about finding what helps you remember, right? It's kind of like memorizing. So if that helps you remember, then it'll work for you. It'll help you, as long as you just have to kind of like work with the actual meaning you're supposed to be taking. And then how can I remember that? And it really does fit beautifully the way that they created the deck in 1909. It's great and easy to read once you finally get the hang of it.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then the last thing was to ancestry. If anyone in our community is interested in doing any sort of geological research, whether it's for personal use or if you're looking into other families, we do have, or you actually have access to Ancestry at our library. You're more than welcome to come in. We do have public service hours that you could come in and browse the library, use our computers. And during that time, you can actually do some geological research. We have our computers for usage. We have all of our Southwest books that you can use too if your family is located in the Southwest region. We have a lot of different resources available for you to actually do the research. And if you need any assistance with the research, ask one of our staff members. We're more than willing to help you with that research too as well. And I appreciate you, Shanna, for spending your time this afternoon talking about your family, talking about your business, talking about your craft overall. And I appreciate it. And I know there are a few people in our community that do appreciate it, even though that they might not publicly want to, as you said, come out of the broom closet. So we are very appreciative, and thank you very much to everyone who tuned into the presentation. And I just would like to remind everyone, A replay of this video will be available on our Facebook timeline and will also be available on our YouTube channel. So that way you can watch it at any time.
And may I add, if you are someone who's interested, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at theghoulisgal@gmail.com, just the Ghoulish Gal altogether. And if you have questions, or if maybe you're looking for recommendations for books or for resources, I would be happy to help you. So reach out, don't be afraid. Yeah, I'd be happy to help you in that journey.
Okay. And with that, we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to the public for now. And then you and I will go ahead and have a brief one-on-one.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.